Hi, and welcome back to Pappy Tinkers and part 2 of how I weather my vehicles. Here you can see I'm done with the frame of this Chevelle. I've got the holes cleaned up a little bit, not too great. I didn't want it to look like a factory repair job. I wanted it to be a little bit more open. It's going to be a kind of sloppy repair. And here's the frame of the Jolly Green Gasser, which had its exhaust molded in also. And I had removed the exhaust on it, and you can see that the plastic that I used in it is not a clean factory looking repair. Instead, I'm making it look like he had a maybe a U-joint accident and it banged up the bottom of the panel, and they just kind of threw some sheet metal in it to make it look okay. This is just .10 or .01 sheet plastic, and you can make it how you want it to look. If you want it to look like it was never there in the first place, you'd do it nice and clean. If you want it to look like a rust hole, you'd leave it kind of jaggedy, or you can make it look like a cheap, quick and easy repair. It's all up to how you want to make it and how you want it to look. Now let's move on to the priming stage. As you can see, right now I'm using Mr. Surfacer, and I'll usually pick up 1200, 1000 for doing this kind of work on automobiles. I'm going to go ahead and prime the bottom because of all the work that I've done on it. And when it's in a nice flat primer like this, it'll give me a good view of what the underside and what my modifications look like. It's just easier to see when it's something like a nice flat primer like this, and then I can decide if I want to smooth it out some more or fill anything or just leave it as it is. The holes in it I'm going to glue in from above, so I don't even have to worry about any glue messing with the primer or it not sticking or anything like that. And I'll glue those panels in just like I did on that Jolly Green Rancher. I'll move on to the body, and I'll do that. Put a coat of primer on everything that I can reach. I don't know if you saw that real quickly, but I filled in the hole that was the original hole for the hood, and this is where you'll get your first looks of the rust holes that you made, and hopefully you'll be as pleased with them as I was. I'm also using a mini touch-up gun from Harbor Freight. It's got a bigger tip, and it'll allow me to put more material out at a quicker rate. The body was a little bit rough to begin with, but you can see those rust holes are really starting to have a more realistic appearance once they have the primer on it. I'm also going to put a couple nice heavy coats on the roof of the vehicle because I want to have enough material on it because there is going to be some sanding involved. And I usually will use either a gray primer like this or something that's very similar to the red oxide primer. Both colors were used by the factories at this point in time, and when you're doing the fades and the rust effects like this, you're going to have some places where there's paint, then there's the primer underneath the paint, and then the bare metal effect. So you want enough material on there that you can make these effects and not have to go all the way down into the plastic, or at least that's the way that I try to do it. The weathering is a layered process, and on the real cars it starts at the bottom and works its way up. That's what you see. You'll see the bare metal, you'll see the primer, you'll see paint, and you'll see rust scattered in throughout these various stages of it. And I'm also going to make sure to paint to get a nice coat on the hood as well. The cutout for the scoop, I could see that in the plastic when I was stripping it and when the old paint was on it, and I really hate when you can see those lines on the finished product. So I'm going to put a couple coats of primer on this hood like this, and then I'll block it out, and you'll see that in a little bit later on, that once it's blocked out and sanded correctly, those lines will disappear, at least from the top. They'll still be in from the bottom, and you can fill them if you want from the bottom. It depends how you plan on displaying the car at the end. But I definitely recommend using a good primer, and I like the control of the airbrush, so that's what I tend to use on this. One of the things that I like about the Mr. Surfacer is how fast it dries. And what I'm going to do with this now that it's dry is I'm going to take this razor saw. This is a Tamiya photo etch razor saw, and these are some really cool things. Pick one up if you ever get the chance. Make the effort to find it. But they are very nice for making your panel lines a little bit deeper, like what I'm doing here. As there is going to be multiple coats of paints and primers and clears and other materials, I want to make sure that my panel lines don't get filled up with paint and primer. So I go through the model, and I'm cutting out a little bit of the primer. And if you go slow and steady with this, you'll make it look pretty good. And this works great on anything where the panel lines are a little bit light. It also works very good for removing extra delicate parts off of the parts trees that, if you've ever tried to snip off an antenna and have it break because you forgot to cut it at the thicker part, this will make a real nice quick work of it. Having a razor saw should be in everybody's toolbox. So while I was cleaning out the panel lines of the tailgate, that's when I got this wild hair. Somebody had sent me a picture of a Pontiac station wagon that he had done years ago, and he had opened up the tailgate on it, and I thought that was just so cool. And I thought, this is something you hardly ever see, so let's give it a try. So instead of just stopping for cleaning out the panel lines on this, I went ahead and started cutting out the tailgate. Now mind you, at this point I still had no idea how I was going to attach this with the hinges. You can't see it so much in these pictures, but this particular tailgate had a hinge at the bottom of the tailgate on the right and left side, and they were for the most part external, and I knew that this would leave me just a very thin strip going across the back of the body, and that it was going to be a little bit difficult, but I had seen the other guy had done it, so why can't I? So I started using the Tamiya razor saw to cut this out, and if I'd used the rounded tip instead of the straight tip that I used on this, it probably would have gone a little bit faster. I also had a hard time keeping it in frame, but it did a very nice job of taking it out and removing this tailgate so that I can try to open it on this thing. As you can see from the inside of the tailgate, there's going to be a lot more work that needs to be done. But you know what? This is all part of weathering a car, showing everything that you might want to do with it. Maybe you want to do a door instead. It's all the same process, whether you're removing a tailgate, a door, or cutting off a fender for that matter. using a razor saw is probably the easiest way to do it. Now I'm going to take this chisel blade that comes with a lot of the X-Acto knife kits when it comes to that little 5-pack of extra blades or so, and I'm going to show you how to remove the chrome off of the door. This is a old car that's seen its use and abuse over the time, and just like any other older car, it may or may not have all of its chrome trim that it originally came with. So while I'm a little bit out of frame here, it gives me the time to tell you that this big wide flat edge is perfect for removing emblems and any kind of chrome trim like this. Maybe not around the windows, but everywhere else, because that big wide flat edge helps keep it nice and easy. You need to make sure that the blade is sharp. Get a new one if you can, but you want it as sharp as it was when it's brand new, so that you can gently glide that along, and with just a light pressure you can remove any molding that was originally on a car. Whether it was on a flat edge or a curved edge, you'll still be able to shave it off. And that's really what we're doing. You don't have to try to get it all off in one hack. Just shave it off a little bit at a time. You're going to need to sand it afterwards. And for something like this, I prefer not to use my fingers, but I'll use an actual sanding block, something that's nice and flat, just like what you'd use on a real car, because you want that surface to look like it was the original sheet metal, not something that's all gouged because a piece of chrome or a piece of the plastic was removed. Afterwards, I'll line up the tape like this on both sides of where that chrome trim used to be. Most of them are held in with, they used to call them speed nuts. So I'll take the smallest drill bit that I have, and I'll start at the edge of each side of it, so that it would be in maybe 2 to 3 inches, scale inches on the real car, and using the tape as a guide, I can easily find the center to make the mounting holes on it. Not every piece of chrome was attached with the speed nuts like this. Some of them had little metal nibs that were welded onto the door and a plastic clip that went in there. But I think this shows a little bit more of a dramatic result, because you see that it's gone, and then you'll see the holes in it. So a piece like this will have 4 to 5 holes drilled into the door at pretty evenly spaced intervals. And you just take your drill bit and make the holes, and having it lined up with the tape makes it very, very easy. Once you have the 2 outer holes done, then you can split the difference for the 2 inner holes. Whether you want to put 4 holes or 5 holes, that's up to you. This one I'm just using 4 holes. But the main idea is to make it so that the holes look even. Now I probably should have grabbed a little straight edge, a little ruler, to precisely measure them out, and some of you guys will do that, but I like to go by the old original Mod Mark 1 eyeball, sometimes referred to as Kentucky windage. But we'll make the holes in here, and you'll see here in just a second as I take the tape off that it looks pretty good, pretty realistic. One of the nice ways about doing it this way is you've got options later on during your build. If you want to make it so that the chrome was violently taken off, there could be rust streaks coming out of the holes. Or maybe it's a work in progress and the holes are just haven't put that emblem back on. And I have a picture of that right here that you can see in just a second on a 55 Chevy that I built a while back. I haven't posted this video yet, but those holes, looks like he's just waiting to find those chrome pieces to put it back on the car. Once you're satisfied with how that feels, you can get ready to move on to the next steps. Now let's put a dent in the tailgate. When you're going to put a dent in a car, first think of what caused the dent. Where are you going to be? Is it realistic? How would a dent like that actually look? So for me, on this particular car, he backed into a mailbox, and I want to put a vertical dent into this tailgate that looks like he just backed up a little bit too far. And for that, I'm going to go right across that seam, and I'm going to use the same chisel point, and I'm going to carve out that dent. Dents can have sharp edges like this particular one will, or they can be more rounded or crumpled. So keep that in mind, and that also determines what you use to make that dent. It can be done realistic and effectively with heat, but it can also be used with just a knife, cutting a shallow wedge in this nice thick plastic. And then I'll take a piece of sandpaper on a little sanding stick, and I'll smooth out any knife marks that might have been left in there. And I believe that when we put the next spot coats of primer on this, that this is going to look like many a dent that you've seen on real cars of somebody that's just accidentally backed into something. And I point out a couple other spots on the body that have those same kind of original marks from the factory that I decided to leave for other dents, like maybe he was hit with a baseball or something like that. And a little piece of garbage that I'm going to trim off right here. But I think this video has gone on long enough, so hope you guys are liking this series, and remember to hit that like and subscribe button so you know when the next episode pops up. And thank you for watching. Pappy Tinkers.